Tuesday, 2nd of June 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Seoul reported May 2026 exports surging 53.2% year-on-year to a record $87.8 billion, powered by a 170% spike in semiconductor shipments that cleared $37 billion on their own. The boom is concentrated in high bandwidth memory, or HBM, where Samsung and SK Hynix have aggressively pivoted production lines to meet global AI infrastructure demand. The two chip makers now account for a record 42.2% of the Kospi index, underscoring how deeply Korea's economic center of gravity has shifted toward the AI supply chain. Why it matters? Korea is now the single largest choke point for the HBM that trains and runs frontier AI models. And that concentration carries real risk alongside the upside. Capital allocators watching Asia Semiconductors should note that a 170% export jump in one category means pricing power today, but also signals capacity build-out that could compress margins within 12 to 18 months if demand plateaus. Builders relying on HBM supply from Samsung or SK Hynix face a queue that is lengthening, not shortening, which keeps lead times elevated for anyone outside the hyperscaler tier. The second-order effect worth tracking is whether Korea's trade surplus, now structurally tied to AI hardware cycles, makes the won more volatile when those cycles inevitably cool. Tokyo's Sakana AI launches Sakana Chat, the first Japan-first consumer assistant built by a domestic frontier lab powered by its Namazu Alpha model family. Namazu fine-tunes DeepSeek v3.1, Llama 3.1, 405B, and GPT OSS 120B specifically for Japanese language and cultural context, positioning it inside the country's growing sovereign AI stack alongside Rakuten AI 3.0, NTT Tsuzumi, and Fujitsu's Nutanix-hosted Japanese large language model. Sakana raised $135 million at a $2.65 billion valuation, with finance and defense variants already on the roadmap. Why it matters? Japan now has a well-capitalized domestic lab shipping a consumer-facing chatbot that sits on top of open-weight foreign-based models rather than training from scratch. A pattern that compresses time to market and keeps compute costs manageable. Builders integrating Japanese language AI get a new option that is tuned locally rather than adapted after the fact by a US or Chinese vendor. Capital allocators should watch whether Sakana's finance and defense variants attract procurement from Japan's megabanks and the Ministry of Defense, because those contracts would validate the sovereign stack thesis beyond research demos. The second-order effect worth tracking. If Namazu's fine-tuning approach proves out, expect similar adapt and ship plays from labs in South Korea and Southeast Asia using the same open-weight base models. Anthropic confidentially filed an S1 prospectus with the SEC on the 3rd of June 2026, setting the stage for what would be one of the largest AI company IPOs on record. The filing follows a $65 billion Series H that valued the Claude maker at $965 billion. Asia-Pacific run rate revenue has grown roughly 10x year-on-year, with 4 regional offices now anchoring the expansion: Tokyo, Bengaluru, Seoul, and Sydney. Why it matters? A public listing at near $1 trillion valuation resets the benchmark for every AI lab still raising private rounds, and the 10x Asia Pacific revenue climb signals that enterprise adoption across the region is no longer a rounding error on a US balance sheet. Capital allocators tracking APAC AI exposure now have a direct public vehicle to price against, which will sharpen comparisons with regional competitors like Naver and SoftBank-backed portfolio companies. Builders integrating Claude across regulated sectors in Japan, India, South Korea and Australia should watch for post-IPO disclosure requirements that could reveal API pricing trajectories and capacity commitments, both of which feed directly into unit economics for any team building on Anthropic's stack. That is your AI in Asia briefing for today. Stay sharp, build well, see you tomorrow.